Hi, everybody. This is the Baseball Hut, the amazing, spectacular, terrific, the great one, the People's Champion. Your host, the Hunter. Welcome back to the Baseball Hut, and hopefully you like this video. And of course, hit that subscribe button. So we're here. It's been a long time coming since I've done a live stream. I haven't done a live stream here at the Hut in 4 months, 3 months. What am I saying? July 31st of the trade deadline. I did a live stream. That was a disaster, wasn't it? Brought in Cedric Mullins at the last minute. What a piece of what a piece of work, piece of garbage. I had that right. Hello, A Prodigy, 426. How you doing? Good night. Good night. Just started. How you doing? So we're gonna do this for a little bit. I'm not gonna go on too long. We got hopefully one more game in the World Series. I hope that the Blue Jays finish things off tomorrow, and we can move on to the off season. I'm contemplating doing a live stream tomorrow night after that game. We do more live streams, I hope, on this channel as we go into the off season. This off season will begin once that last out is made, and we get to watch, see what kind of stuff the Mets do. Sort of half and half on some of the moves they've made. I'm not too happy about this guy that they put in as bench coach, Kai Correa, and although I am very happy that they got rid of Jeremy Hefner. They brought in Troy Snicker to be the hitting coach, who's been very successful. So that's a good sign. He's successful for a very long time with the Astros. So that is good news to see. That makes me feel not all warm and fuzzy inside, but it makes me feel pleasantly. Makes me feel a lot less grumpy than I was when this season ended. Over the last few weeks, randomly I've watched myself watch the final out of the season when Lindor hit that double play to end the season for the Mets down in Miami, and you can see how pissed off I was, like you all were when you saw that. And I cannot let it go, and I can't be so nice and pleasant like I've been and fair. I got to be a little bit. I'm gonna have to be mean now and be the dark hut. I hate having to be that, but sometimes things are called for. I know there's all kinds of rumors about Tarik Skubal. I know that the agent's putting out all kinds of stuff that that there was a big gap. I mean, talk about insulting. The guy pitched great last year, and they offered him $80 million. He actually did more than Garrett Crochet did last year. When the Cy Young, Garrett Crochet didn't do anything last year. He did not pitch much in September of last year for the White Sox. And of course, Skubal is a going to be probably a two-time Cy Young Award winner. To offer the money that they offered him, you know that the agent Scott Boras and the whisperer, the Scott Boras whisperer, John Heyman, put out that information. Hello, John boy. How you doing there, buddy? What's going on? And of course, if you're watching the live stream now, live, or you're watching a replay, please hit the like button. I was thinking this channel has been around for about 5 years. A lot has certainly happened. A lot has happened over the last 5 years. I don't really talk much about it, but a lot has happened. From where I started really doing this channel to now, it is like night and day. I have a new home here. And of course, I thank you all for watching my videos and sending me super chats and super thanks and being members of the channel. It's very, very much appreciated. And the big reason I was doing all these videos and working my ass off online is because of this. And here we are. But a lot has certainly changed. I used to do, before we get back to the Mets, used to do these live streams every Saturday night. And really, there was nobody else. I was the only game in town, folks. For the most part, only game in town. I really was one of these YouTubers. I was the only one talking about the Mets. I would get like hundreds of people in the live stream watching. When I didn't have any kind of following, I didn't even have like 400 subscribers. I was getting like 100 people, watching my videos and the live streams. Just incredible. But because of my schedule, which is probably the biggest culprit, my schedule at work is so difficult sometimes that I can't schedule anything on a regular basis over the last few years. Prior to that, the schedule is pretty stable. John Boy asks, are you still in the dark? Well, I'm not in the dark. The club's in the dark. You know, they're in the dark. I'm not in the dark. I have seen the light. And now being dark means having to be mean and go all comic cut on them. And I don't want to have to do that, but I have no choice. But 5 years ago, also, and I would mention today is the 5-year anniversary of Steve Cohen buying the Mets. That was a great day. It was a great day. We have a great owner. That's the one thing we can say. We have a great owner. Who cares? Hold on, I need a drink. We have a great owner. He knows what he's doing. He's spent a hell of a lot of money. He really has been able to connect the entire fan base with him. He's the least of the Mets' problems, but he has to be tougher with this group. He can't get this. There are people in this organization that are still part of, still the Wilpon people. There's still people skulking around. He has to get rid of them. I've said that for quite a while. That's not a dark HUD thing. That's a common sense thing. But when I started out doing these videos 5 years ago, I didn't think that I'd be in this place. This is a beautiful home I have here, great neighborhood, and where I was before was not great. It was really bad shape. That town that I was in for many, many years is in bad shape. I'm not going to get into where it is, but it's in bad shape. And I'm glad to be out of there. My family's very happy to be here. And of course, it's because of you. And back then we talked about what the Mets were going to do. Talked a lot. I believe if I remember properly, we talked a lot about Francisco Lindor. I think George Springer. See George Springer, how he has had quite the effect. For the Blue Jays, he has had some injuries there. He's an older player now, but he's been a major player. A Prodigy says they've done that a lot in the minor league levels. What do you mean by that? Need a little more. What have they done? Give me a little sort of idea of what they've done. Oh, you mean get rid of the Wilpons? Okay, good. Well, that's good. Yeah, you need to get rid of everybody. Well, the minor league's a little bit easier. The major league level is more difficult, but because then you get some people that are high profile. Like I've said, get rid of the people in the ticket office, get rid of the people in the ushers, get rid of everybody. I heard a crazy story. I heard a story about a usher at Citi Field that during the season, a friend of mine told me this at work, who was he works as a security guard at Jones Beach, and he knows somebody that was an usher at Citi Field. And the usher, who had been there for like 30 years, 40 years, had asked Juan Soto for an autograph, which Soto gave him, but unfortunately, you can't do that as an usher. And he got fired. You can't do that. That's sort of, it's not really something you do, unfortunately, for that usher. He's out of work after being there for many, many years. He wanted to get Juan Soto's autograph before he got the hell out of there, and that's what he did. But so, a lot has happened over the last 5 years. The Mets have made postseason twice. They've had two very disappointing seasons in 2022 and, of course, this year. So the 5 years with Steve Cohen has been sort of a mixed bag. And the Mets have been trying to sort of bring it in a very good, successful brand. And they need to sort of, like I said, keep getting rid of these Wilpon people. And according to Prodigy, who's in the Mets organization, he's confirmed as here. You can't ask for any autographs of a player if you are an usher, you get fired. But how stupid is that? And you know that. But the Mets have sort of had a mixed bag over the last 5 years of success and major disappointments. 2025, I would not put that up there with 2007 due to the fact that the team, it was a slow draining of blood from a body. In 2007, it was like a shock, complete total shock to the system, the way the Mets lost in 2007. And the Mets did not learn their lesson after that season. Omar decided to keep the entire coaching staff for the most part. He decided to keep the manager. He made no major sort of subtractions from the organization as a team on the field. What he did was he brought an addition, thinking that the problem was a pitching problem and a starting problem when he brought in Johan Santana. Now Santana was a great pitcher. I mean, you look at his numbers; they are on par with some of the great pitchers in the game. I mean, you look at his numbers; they're just incredible numbers. But he's not going to get. Unfortunately, he didn't get much of a sniff in the Hall of Fame. He should gotten a long look. But Omar didn't recognize the fact that the problem with that club was much deeper than just they needed an addition of an ace. And then instead of like getting rid of people that were in this organization, I'll put a name out there. Was Jose Reyes was a player that they probably could have moved if they wanted to. They didn't do that. I'm just using him as an example. I'm not saying that he was the cause of problems, but you needed to change the personality of that team a little bit, and Omar didn't do that. And then you had a repeat of 2008, but instead you were faced with the idea that you had to fire Willie Randolph in the middle of June because the team got off to such a slow start. Delgado got off to a slow start. Santana got off to a slow start. And then instead of at the end of that season, again, they collapsed again. And what the silly thing was that they fired Willie in the middle of the night in June in Anaheim. And instead of like bringing somebody in from the outside the organization or someone from the minor leagues in to manage the team, he brings in Jerry Manuel, who should have been fired along with Willie, including the pitching coach. They all should have been gone because he was part of this collapse. He makes him the manager, and the Mets got a worse manager, and Jerry Manuel. In my time as a Mets fan, two of the worst managers the Mets ever had, guys that I did not like as manager, was Jerry Manuel and Jeff Torborg. Okay, Art Howe was a stiff, but he wasn't like he had a lot of success with the A's. Okay, Jerry Manuel was sort of up and down. He wore the Met bullpen out, and Jeff Torborg was a disaster. Could not handle being in New York. But be that as it may, we go into this off season. Okay, the Mets have sort of figured out you need to sort of get rid of the entire coaching staff. There was a sort of a kerfluffle last week, or maybe it was this week. It doesn't matter when this whole nonsense with Antoine Richardson, that the media, part of the media, was getting so like exercised. The Mets let him go. They couldn't come up to an agreement. Hey, he was part of this problem here with the coaching staff. Okay, the stolen bases the Mets had, I didn't feel that those stolen bases helped the Mets win games. They were stealing bases. That's great, but how many times can you really honestly say, well, they hadn't had that stolen base in that spot, they wouldn't have scored a run? They got rid of the entire coaching staff. Now, the problem is, which is a good thing, the Mets did a good thing by doing that. But the problem is, because of this collapse, you have a manager here that is a young manager still. He's had one good year and he's had one bad year. One great year, one bad year, and a bad collapse. You need to be much tougher in your thinking when you have these kind of historical collapses. I'm a bit of a historian. The 64 Phillies had a bad collapse. They kept Gene Mauch for years. He was their manager for years. So one day I was curious about how those teams played after 64. 65, they had a lousy year, but they had a winning record. 66, 67, 68. And it got to a point the organization basically disintegrated. So by the time we get to 67, 68, and 69, the team was so bad. That Phillies team was so bad that eventually they got lucky. And the Cardinals traded Steve Carlton. But that team was just completely disintegrated. We saw this with the Mets in 2007, 2008, 2009. They had an injury to Jose Reyes at the end of the year. That completely destroyed the club, as well as we saw the end of the career of Carlos Delgado. And that completely disintegrated the Mets team. 2010, they were lousy. 2011, they were lousy. They didn't come out of that at best until 2015. All right. And we know about the whole thing with Madoff. Now, I bring this all up because now we look at this team now in 2026. You have the manager here, okay? The biggest issue with what happened in 2007 was the Mets did not have a backup plan in case there was a problem with the team if they got off to a slow start. The Mets brought in Kai Correa. I wouldn't know him from a hole in the wall, okay? He's never managed, as far as I know, anywhere in professional baseball. At least with Mendoza, he has managed in the minor leagues. He's managed a lot of games for the Yankees when Aaron Boone decided to sort of go apeshit in these games and get himself thrown out. And I talked a lot about this in the videos, how concerned I am about this team, because this team has had a habit for years, for the last 5-6 years, of going through these stretches where they play great and then they play lousy. They play great, they play lousy. They don't hit, they don't field, they don't pitch properly. Now, the one good thing is they did get rid of Jeremy Hefner. That was a major problem here. But if this team gets off to a very slow start again, there's going to be talk about firing the manager. Who is in this organization currently that could take over and you'd feel confident about? There's nobody. You want to bring in Andy Green? Andy Green, who did not have successful seasons in San Diego. Kai Correa, who's never managed. Carlos Beltran, the former manager, then gets fired. Do you feel confident in him? He has no experience. Are you going to if you get desperate, you bring in Bruce Bochy. And there are managerial jobs still open, okay? The Braves job's still open, by the way. So I'm just saying, just looking at it logically, if the club gets off to a slow start, even if they make moves, they bring in a big pitcher, how good are they going to be? Are they going to be? Do they have a backup plan? That's been my concern going into the off season. I have no problem bringing back Mendoza, but you have to understand, because you can't be unfair to the guy and say, he had a good year and then had a bad year, and they fire him. But anyway, that's something I just wanted to elaborate more on. They did the same thing with Davey Johnson too. They were sort of on the fence all through September of '89. There was all kinds of rumors the Mets were going to fire Davey at the end of the season. Davey expected to be fired. The late Davey Johnson. I would mention about Davey Johnson. Davey Johnson should have been in the Hall of Fame. John Boy. I'll get back to Davey. John Boy, Kai, another puppet. I don't know what that means. Okay, John Boy. Mendoza was hired by David Stearns. Are you a puppet of your boss? I don't understand this attitude of guys being brought in. Well, this guy's a puppet. That guy's a puppet. I don't get that. There's no such thing. You're an employee, not a puppet. Okay, we're not talking about politics here. I've seen that about Correa. That's not fair. So if you get hired at a job, you're a puppet of your employer. That's silly. He's a puppet. Well, like Pinocchio? I don't think he's like Pinocchio. Well, like a Muppet. I don't think he's like Kermit the Frog. But I forgot what the hell I was talking about. Oh, Davey. So Davey thought he was going to get fired after '89. The Mets brought him back. He was shocked. So instead of the Mets firing Davey and doing a good search trying to find somebody to replace him. And there were rumors that they were going to hire at the time Dallas Green because he was like the opposite of Davey. He wasn't he was a disciplinarian. Davey wasn't. He was a player's manager, but he wasn't disciplinarian. So when the team went into spring training that year, they didn't have the leadership in that clubhouse was gone. Because Keith went to the Indians. Kidd went to San Francisco to play with the Giants as a backup. So the leadership in that clubhouse, it was gone. But leadership is a two-way street too. You got to have production. The biggest reason that team didn't, '89 team didn't do better was because they lost out Gooden after June, and there was nothing behind the plate in that first base. Dave Magnan didn't like do the kind of job he did the following year. But anyway, so they go into the season with no plan who the backup was, in case they had to fire Davey, and there was a lot of pressure there about Davey. So eventually the Mets fired Davey in Cincinnati, and they named Buddy Harrelson as manager. Now on the surface, that seemed like a great idea because Davey had a good, he was the Mets their base coach for a long time. He was the Mets bench coach for a long time. He seemed like an ideal candidate. He'd managed in the minor leagues. He had a lot of experience. He played under Gil Hodges. He seemed like the ideal candidate long term for the Mets manager. And you saw how Buddy, it didn't take well to be in the manager. He's very thin skinned. You couldn't criticize him. So it wasn't a good match. So I just want to sort of give you sort of historical background on that. But now that I look at this team, it's been almost a month now. We don't know where they're going right now. Now, during the World Series, all these teams meet. They have meetings. They sit down. They talk about different players, about who's going to get traded, who's not going to get traded. We know that Skubal is the big name out there. He will be the big name that in all likelihood he's going to get moved. I would be shocked if the Tigers kept him for another season, okay? Because they're going to want to get something in return. They're not going to let him walk because that would not go over well with their fan base. And I don't look at them wanting to pick up all these prospects for Skubal when they've been in postseason the last 2 years. They're not going to want to do that. They're going to want to have a group of players that is a mix of young players that are going to be ready for the major leagues, guys that can hit, guys that are going to pitch in the rotation right away, and some guys that have been in the major leagues. That's why I've mentioned a lot in my videos, David Peterson, and I've sort of mentioned a little bit Clay Holmes. Clay Holmes, I tell you, his value, I was thinking his value is enormous. And his value could be enormous for this ball club because if they re-sign Edwin Diaz, you can leave Clay Holmes in your rotation. If you lose Edwin Diaz, you could put Clay Holmes in your bullpen and make him your closer. He was a closer with the Yankees. You could use Clay Holmes as trade bait. He doesn't have a no trade clause. He's got a 1-year deal. He had an excellent season for a guy that's been in the bullpen his whole career in the major leagues, and he pitched really well. I think he's going to have a better year as a starter this year. Next year coming up. So he has a lot of value to me. And he doesn't panic when he pitches, which is a great thing to see. So he, to me, has a lot of value as a pitcher. Then you have David Peterson. So if you were to trade one of them, you could say, to the Tigers fans, like, look, you're getting a guy that's been an all-star. You got David Peterson, who was an all-star last year. You got Clay Holmes, who's been an all-star as a reliever, and he's been a very good starting pitcher. He stayed healthy all year. There was no talks about his arm being a problem. We do know that he ran out of gas. He got tired at the end, but he pitched really well the last few weeks of the season, and he had a very good season. He was really excellent. So I look at this team, what they have to offer, not only on the minor league level for school, but also on the major league level, which would be very good pieces. And David Peterson, they could probably give him a 4-year deal for $80 million. That could be money that they could allocate to him, and they could say, well, he's an all-star. He was an all-star last year. He pitched really well the last year and a half. And they can say, well, he ran out of gas, plus coming into Detroit, a different situation with a better manager. that would put them in a very good position with him. So that to me, you'd have to probably give up Sproat or Jonathan. You'd probably have to give some of these middle infielders. Mets have so many infielders that are at the major league level, that are in AAA, AA. A lot of talent here that could really help this club long term in terms of a trade. Um, Now I've heard people say Pablo Lopez. He's a number 2 starter, number 3 starter, in my opinion. Uh, I was I did a video earlier about Luis Robert Jr. Again, the love affair with Robert Jr. is unreal. The guy has been lousy the last few years. And he has a history of being unhealthy. Hold on, I need to drink. Look. So I look at this trade market. It's a very good trade market for the Mets, and it is actually a very good pitching market on the free agent side. I would stay away from guys like Michael King. Okay, I know that he's a free agent. They were talking about him on SNY tonight. Don't stay away from him. Guy only made 15 starts. Framber Valdez is out there. You want guys. If you can't get a guy like Skubal, you go after Valdez in a quick way, uh, in a strong way, because he's an ace. Okay, this team needs an ace. It also needs another starter in here that'll give them innings. Merrill Kelly could help them. Zach Gallen could help them. Guys like that can give them innings that are very healthy. And that's kind of what I'm looking at as a Mets fan with the pitching side. Now, the offensive side of this club, that's a different story because this group has been together now a long time. Lindor, Alonso, Nimmo, McNeil. These are 4 guys that have been together for a long time now. And quite frankly, some people have to go. I know Keith was on with with Joel Sherman and the Boris Whisperer, and he talked about the Mets are probably going to make a lot of trades, and they have to consider moving Jeff McNeil, seeing what kind of value Francisco Lindor has, see what kind of value Brandon Nimmo has. I love Nimmo, but I kind of look at him as you have to sort of weed him off the outfield, in my opinion. Now, Pete Alonso is it continues to be a tough call because he had a big year. The Mets would not have been in the position they were in most of the season if it wasn't for him. He had a lot of big hits, and it's very difficult to duplicate his numbers. The problem is his defense is so porous that you have to sort of consider, telling him, like, look, going to need to put you at DH in more games. A Project says Alonso will be gone. What makes you say that, A Prodigy? Who will replace those numbers? Do you have any dope, any inside dirt, inside thoughts about it? His market is going to be high. I don't know how his market is going to be so good because all the teams that had first basemen that needs at first base last year, all those first basemen, they all got contracts. I mean, he's not going to Houston. I don't see him going to Boston. I don't think the Yankees could have signed him last year. I don't think the Yankees have a different kind of mentality anyway. But there is really with the Mets, it's a tough situation with this position player thing, and they're going to have to make very tough decisions. Juan Soto's fine, as you know, he's been great. He was great most of the season. Okay, and I didn't realize that his speed. He was much faster player on the bases than what I thought he was. I didn't realize this either, folks. He led the league in stolen bases. I couldn't believe when I saw that. He and Ellie De La Cruz both led the league in 38 stolen bases. Can you imagine that? First of all, the stolen bases is low for a league, for a team for a player that to win that title. And 2, and Juan Juan Soto had 38 stolen bases, just incredible. Had an incredible season. His defense comes and goes. I think he's an average defensive player. I don't think he's going to be in right field a long term. Obviously, uh, eventually he'll be a left fielder. A Price says Alonso's defense is pathetic, and they will probably trade for someone when he leaves. Well, we'll see. That we'll see. Because you figure the Mets will talk to him about being a DH. Any ideas who they would trade for? That's gonna be a tough call because people love Pete. I love Pete, but this group has been together too long. That's a tough call. It's an emotionally difficult call. I don't have any inside info on this, but it's what I think is happening. Okay, well we'll see. We're gonna find out. After the game, hopefully tomorrow, all these players are gonna come on the market, and that'll be fun to watch and see how quickly. Hopefully Pete signs quicker than he did last year. I don't want to be talking about Pete when we get to February, please. But we'll see how that sort of works out. Now, again, the Mets have all these middle infielders, and these infielders, the infield glut in the Major League level. We got Luis Angel Acuna, we got Brett Beatty, we got Ronnie Mauricio, we got Mark Vientos. The Mets going to have to clear some of them out of here because they're going to have all these other young players coming up, Jet Williams, Jacob Reamer, and a whole bunch of other guys coming in here that they have to decide. They have to decide what they want to do moving forward. Because really, someone said to me, if you have like 3 third basemen, I don't remember who it was that told me that, then you don't have a third baseman. And if you don't have a third baseman, and it's funny, I don't think the Mets have really had a third baseman since David Wright left. David Wright retired. They haven't had anybody there. And that's a long time. It's a long time. It's a long time without having a stability at a position. And it's tough, Just looking at on the side here, looking at the Mets' top 30 prospects, just curious in terms of infielders. So the top infielders, the Mets have Jet Williams, Jacob Reamer, A.J. Yoon, who's probably an outfielder now, Ryan Clifford, Mitch Voigt, Elian Pena. And Elian Pena's my the Mets' best prospect. A Project says they will almost certainly trade for a pitcher and a center fielder. I hope to God they don't bring in Robert. I don't want him. Can't hit. He's a bigger name version of Tyrone Taylor. We have Jet Williams, who is probably going to play here at some point on 26. Jacob Rammer, who will be a AAA unless he gets moved. AJ Yoon, unless he'll be in AAA unless he gets moved. Let's see. See the next guy in here. Chris Suaro. You want to keep an eye on him because he might be the next hot prospect the Mets have. Because he's doing some job in the Arizona Fall League. He can put the outfield as first base. He's got some speed, real great versatility. Jacob Young as an option. Well, we'll see about him. And then after that, we got as an infielder Antonio Jimenez, who they signed their third round pick this year. Let me look at a couple of things. But of course, please, hit the like button and subscribe. And I want to thank you for watching. Let's take a look at Jacob Young here. Jacob Young, no power. Oh, great. He killed him. I'll tell you, he killed the Mets in those games, man. That one game, he absolutely killed them. Jacob Young. OPS plus this year, 68. He's not cutting it. He's not cutting it. He's not a good offensive player. His offense, OPS plus, is 78. So 22% worse than the average major leaguer over his career. I wouldn't do that. Yeah, 33 stolen bases last year. 15 this year. I wouldn't do that. I would stay away from him. I'm sorry. I know that he made those great catches in City Field, but I wouldn't touch him. He doesn't really do it for me. It's not a bad idea, but I wouldn't do it. A Project says I would trade Suaro. Well, we'll see. The one thing about these mid-range prospects is that they're more expendable than the top guys are. Guys that are expendable that could get moved off the Mets, is Ryan Clifford, AJ Ewing, Suaro, Morabito, Jonathan Pintaro, Davison Gutierrez, Dylan Ross, Boston Barrow, Ryan Lambert, Zach Thornton, RJ Gordon, Peter Cuso, Trey Schneider. I mean, these are the kind of guys that are going to be talked. That are going to be moved. Yeah, I think they're gonna trade for a pitcher too. I think they'll sign a free agent. I think, and they need to do that, and they'll bring in a pitcher to a trade. Those are the things I see them doing. They certainly are in desperate need for a center fielder. Cedric Mullins was horrendous. He was terrible for the 2 months they had him. You can understand why the Orioles were quick to get rid of him. They didn't give up much to get him, but boy, he was terrible. Every trade that David Stearns made at the deadline was one bad idea, one trade idea that everything was bad. It makes me so tongue-tied. I've seen all of these guys play on a daily basis. Suaro can't handle good pitching. His discipline is lacking. Interesting. Interesting. But let me put that up there. I would mention if you're gonna mention players, just put them. Don't give them the pronoun. Put their noun name in it, like their name, Suaro. Or if I'm talking about one of the other Met prospects, that way everybody else in the chat knows what I'm talking about, and you're talking about. But so the Mets need a first baseman if they don't resign Pete. They certainly need a center fielder. Center field is probably the number one position that they need a help on, because you can't have Jeff McNeil out there. He's not a center fielder. And I thought the Mets broadcasters that's why I didn't think they had a good year this year with the broadcasts. And I think it showed in that awful announcing poll. Hold on, any drink. When they were saying that Jeff McNeil was a good defensive outfielder, it's like, what are they watching? Jeff McNeil's probably going to be gone. We'll talk about that now. He's probably going to be gone. It'll be interesting to see where he lands, because we know that the Mariners have had interest in him in the past. Maybe the Guardians. It's hard to say what his market is, because in my opinion, I don't think he had a good year. Hit 250 or less than that. But his OPS was like close to 800. This guy didn't have a good year. What kind of player is he? He's a power hitter. Is he an average hitter? Is he like a contact hitter? He doesn't strike out. He walks a little bit. I mean, what kind of player is he at this point in his career? And really, his game is really a decline since he won that batting title. I don't know what's happened to him behind the scenes. I know that he could be a little bit, a little rough on the field. I don't know how he's behind the scenes and in the clubhouse. We know this whole kerfluffle that happened years ago with the possum and the raccoon. Those two guys did something they said some immature things. They just said, look, we had an issue when it came to who was covering, and it doesn't mean anything. They just said we respect each other as players, respect each other as men, and that's it. We had an issue when it came to who was covering the base, and we got in a heated moment, and that's what they should have said instead of that ridiculousness that they said, and moved on. But I'm surprised that McNeil is still here. I thought they would have moved him last year. Um, because he really at this point doesn't have a position that you can play him every day. The Mets will say he'll play second, and they put him in the outfield at some point. They have too many moving parts in here. Sometimes you need a little bit of stability with your players, and they don't have that. That's the one thing I noticed about this team is that even when they brought in guys, say they played McNeil at second a little bit, he didn't get any hits, and they put in Beatty, he did okay, and then they brought in Acuna to play second, he didn't get it. Here's the thing about Acuna: he's got great speed. He can put the bat on the ball. He can steal base when you need him. He can score runs when you need him. He can score on a single from first. He could do everything, but he's got no power, zero power. He doesn't even hit it for any doubles or triples. How is that possible? How's that possible? Well, we've seen how possible it is. He's really just a single setter. He's not his brother, that's for sure. Mets had him as if he was like his brother, boy. He would have hit like 30 home runs, but he just doesn't have any power. It's too bad because he's very talented in all the other areas that you need him to be talented in. Mark Vientos, what's going on with him? Well, here's the problem with Vientos. I've said this for a few years. He's got his defense has been terrible. It was terrible this past year. It wasn't that bad in 2024, but it was bad this year. And I think he kind of got full of himself after that postseason last year, and maybe didn't take things as seriously as he should have, which is also part of that sort of sophomore jinx. Second go around, they took advantage of his weaknesses, which really is trying to pull everything. Once he got away from what Beltran had told him going into 2024, he kind of went back to how he used to hit, and he saw the sort of disaster that was. I can go on and on about this position player issue, but let's talk about the bullpen a little bit. Well, the pitching is really. Hopefully things will get resolved here where guys aren't walking batters like crazy. All the guys that having Hefner out here is a big deal. But having this bullpen where you had Tyler Rogers, who I didn't think Rogers had a good season with the Mets. It was 2 months. Then you have Gregory Soto, who was a mess. Then you have Ryan Helskin or Helton, or what the hell his name was, Helsley. And then, of course, you had the other guy. This was not a good bullpen. Reed Garrett did not pitch well, in my opinion. The only guy that pitched well in that bullpen were Brooks Raley and, of course, Edwin Diaz. Brooks Raley would be back. Edwin Diaz is a different story. It can go either way, in my opinion. But they have to do a better job of developing these guys in their farm system. I thought it was unfair that they brought up Dylan Ross the last 3 games of the season. How's he going to help you? He's not going to help you. And he didn't. There was no reason to call him up. Unfair. But all these trades the Mets made at the deadline, all of them didn't work. None of them worked. And it's just and it gets you mad, it gets you mad about that. That Stearns is a smart guy, but he just did a lousy job at the deadline. And 2 years in a row at the deadline. He didn't have a good deadline the year before, That's for sure. And then and then now let's get into some meat of it. Frankie Montas, they never should have signed him. And now he's hurt, he's done. Tyler Rogers was, even though you look at his numbers, they look okay on the surface, but he pitched terrible when they needed him to pitch better. Paul Blackburn was a deal they never should have made last year. That was a bad move. Okay? The biggest thing that hurt the Mets was losing A.J. Minter. Losing him hurt them. Look at it. I'm looking at this. This is crazy. The Mets had 12 to 4. They had 33 pitchers pitch for them this year. I mean, just 46 pitchers. What am I talking about? 46 pitchers pitched for them. Dave Peterson was fine until he sort of ran out of gas. Clay Holmes had a good year. Kodai Senga's probably going to get moved, I would think. Griffin Canning pitched well until he hurt his Achilles. Tyler McGill, he's done for another year. Sean Manaea pitched the way he had pitched in other places. And I'm sick of seeing Brazelbach. Can we not pitch him anymore? or ever see him again. Ryan Stanek had a terrible, disastrous year. Max Kranick pitched well until he didn't pitch well, and then he got hurt. I mean, really, this was a mess. They really missed the Daniel Nunez. He's gone. You know, it just didn't work. You know, top to bottom, it was a lousy season. It was a mess from really. And it's funny. I think we all kind of felt that there was something off about this team, and I think there was a lot of lack of leadership in that clubhouse. People have been talking about Lindor being this great leader, but it really, when you see stories about Juan Soto talking about Starlin Marte being the guy that all the players go to, and sort of the leader of the Mets, that should tell you that there was a problem. John Boy says there's no set lineup besides 1 through 4. Right. The bottom of the lineup was non-existent. That's why not having Mets missed JD Martinez in a big way. But Martinez was done by the middle of August. He was great in June. He was great in July. And then he hit August. He got to the middle of August, and he basically fell apart. They didn't have Francisco Alvarez. And I don't think Alvarez had a good year at all, in my opinion. He played terrible defensively. They had to send him down because he wasn't hitting. He hit a little bit better when he came back, but he didn't scare me in this lineup. And obviously, not having any kind of solid production out of Vientos hurt them a lot. But I think that the lack of leadership, Martinez's leadership, along with his ability to hit good pitching, not having it here hurt this club. And Jose Iglesias, who I thought they needed to move on from him, but that leadership was important in that clubhouse. And the fact that they supported a guy that sang a song about God was important. Just as an aside. And I guess Iglesias had mentioned Jose Quintana. Not having him in that rotation really hurt them. But we're going to talk more about this stuff probably most Sundays. I'll probably do these live streams on Sundays, I think. I just wanted to come on. I was bored. I had nothing to do. There's no games tonight. I don't have I know there's a football game on, but it's not on TV. I think it's on Amazon or whatever the hell it's on. So I wasn't watching any football. So it was a pretty quiet night here. And the rain finally stopped. The weather was terrible in New York. New York and Long Island got hit really bad with a bad storm. I know it was bad in Brooklyn. It was bad in Manhattan. I don't know how it was in Queens or the old Homestead, but I'm sure it was pretty bad there. So I'll probably be if I'm not tired on Sunday. I should be back on Sunday. We'll try to do regular live streams on Sunday. I think we'll see. I like to be able to do regular live streams and come to you on a regular basis, and when I come on, rather than every night. I can't really do every night because I have so many channels. It's unbelievable. I'm trying to make as much money as I can, because I'm not like part of the cool kids club, I do my own thing here, so I kind of like do my own thing, and I want to keep it like that. So I'm trying to I would mention I'm very concerned about next year, about the lockout, the possibility that we won't have baseball going into 2026. So I'm concerned about where the income's going to come from. Not that I make a lot of money here, but I do make money that helps with the house, But hope we get the football hut, monetized. It's taking years to get monetized, spin its wheels. But I want to thank you all for coming by at such short notice. Thanks for everybody for coming in and saying hello. Thank you, A Prodigy. Thank you, John Boy. And again, I'll be back hopefully on Sunday, and talk about the Mets, and we'll see what happens. Once this World Series is over, we'll have a beginning to have an idea of where they're going to go. And then starting next week, we'll really hit the ground running with whatever's going on. But thank you all for coming by. Please, of course, subscribe to the Baseball Hut. Thanks for watching. Have a good night, and I'll see you later.